Okay, welcome to our New York Giants Preservation Society meeting for today, Thursday, March 7th, 2024. Tonight we got a special guest, Greg Elliott. Greg is the head groundskeeper at Oracle Park. This month we're going to dedicate a lot of the month to the preseason and baseball starting. So next week there is a change. We have Marty Laurie, who does the Giants pre games on the weekends. He was scheduled for Thursday. He's going to be here on Wednesday. Couple of things. Last week's Zoom, I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm not talking like a teacher. There are some rules that need to be followed. Somebody talks, everybody else needs to be muted, and no interrupting after the talking. It's rude. And it's not the way we should be going about things. Try to stay on your topics and be cognizant of how long you're speaking. Like I said, last week was not one of our better showings, in my opinion. So if I mute you, please don't turn on your mic again. There's a reason why. Let the person who is expressing their topic finish talking. Okay? And finally, I'd like to read you a letter that I got yesterday. I think you will enjoy it. Gary, happy 24 to you. We don't know how we could possibly adequately express the appreciation and gratitude that overwhelmed us upon opening your surprise package. What a wonderful, heartfelt, and authentic tribute. You could not have done anything that thrilled us more. This, of course, has to do with the checks that were mailed to the Say Hey Fund. When we opened your package on Monday, March 4th, only a month after Willie Mays Day in San Francisco, we were blown away. This letter is being typed by me, Renee Anderson, board member of the Say Hey Foundation, with the verbal instruction from Willie himself. We both had a hard time trying to think of the best things to say. Since we all understand what it means to be part of a team, maybe our team analogy will serve us best. The membership of the New York Giants Preservation Society is made up of folks from all over the country. Your team has been assembled miraculously from different sources. How is that possible? It was possible because you've been drawn together for your love of baseball, New York City, the history of the New York Giants, and your respect and love for Willie Mays. Your gift is also a tribute to all of your members and their efforts to preserve a legacy. You guys are all winners in Willie's book. Willie said, "These people are helping me with my foundation. This isn't even my birthday. It's a wonderful thing." That's pretty good.
4 or 5 of us from tours.
And that last line is his highest praise. He doesn't pontificate. He just calls it as he sees it. What you all did was indeed pretty good. We are so thrilled by your thoughtfulness, generosity, and sense of fun. The celebration was a spur of the moment concoction that was picked up by our good friend Adam Swig, who ran with it. Adam carried it every step of the way, even after it not only caught on, but also exploded into a sensational appreciation for Willie. Willie kept asking, "What do I need to do? What is my job on 2424?" We told him, "Just keep being Willie Mays. Nothing else required." I wish I had a photo of the grin that spread over his face. It was priceless. Your society has done a magnificent thing for the most deserving fellow. Your tribute has made a difference, and he is most grateful, as I am. Please let me know if you need anything else. Sincerely, Renee. I thought that was appropriate to read. As I don't know if you know, he had hip surgery recently. He's not, he's bedridden because of the hip. So I answered her back, and I sent her the video of our 3 hour uh, soiree, if you want to call it that. But let's turn to our tonight. It is my privilege and pleasure to introduce Greg Elliott. Greg is the man most responsible for all of the things us New Yorkers and non-San Franciscans see when they turn on the TV and see how beautiful Oracle Park is. And for the many members in this group who live in San Francisco and attend games, you all should realize that Greg is the man most responsible for making the ballpark as beautiful as it is on television. I was able to get in touch with Greg, one of our members who's on tonight, Carmen Magazino, came across him in an elevator in San Francisco, told him about our group, and from there I was able to track Greg down, and he's here tonight. So why don't we all welcome Greg Elliott. Greg, the floor is yours. Maybe you
Thank
could
you.
tell us about yourself and what you do, and there'll be a lot of questions from our
Yeah,
members. Floor is yours.
certainly. Thank you, Gary. That's the first and probably last time my name will be mentioned with Willie Mays. So thank you all. I would just like to extend my gratitude. It was a pleasure meeting Carmen in the elevator at the Fairmont and a random, we were there for holiday shows and doing some stuff. So my family, and I was able to cross paths with him. I saw his little button and was instantly intrigued. I think I think it's a wonderful thing that everyone here is doing, keeping in touch with the team that actually left your town, and but has still connected with its roots and still goes back to New York and all these different times. I know there was a concerted push for the World Series trophies to make it back for everyone that was still in New York, and the New York contingent is very much alive in San Francisco, and they're very well appreciated. Um, that's not a marketing ploy. That's just me watching from the outside, looking in from my little box on the field, my little office, my outdoor office, as I like to call it. I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, and I'm a one of three boys. My older brother is a scout for the Detroit Tigers, currently, formerly an MLB scout, and my younger brother's a chef, but that's not really necessary. But we all grew up around a baseball park because my dad coached Little League Baseball for 25 years. So we were born and raised on a ballpark, and it's fitting that two of the three of us work in baseball. I feel like um, I have a degree in elementary education from Bowling Green State University. Never taught a day in my life. I respect teachers too much to put my name in that hat and kind of bring it down. And then I just kind of made my way into baseball. I worked for USA Baseball, went to work for the Arizona Fall League in operations. Eventually came home to Toledo and worked for the Toledo Mud Hens. Jamie Farr, my grandmother grew up with him, wonderful man, and Danny Thomas, for you guys that know who that is. Grew up in the same neighborhood, so that's pretty cool. And then I got in that when I was in baseball operations, I kind of found my niche, and I went back to turfgrass management school at Michigan State University. And I was one of the older students, already been through college, so I kind of understood what I needed to do to get by. And I became a mentor to many of the other people in the industry and in the class. So after that, Indianapolis for my internship with the eventual head groundskeeper of the Philadelphia Phillies, Mike Buckholder. And then I got my first job out of college in Cedar Rapids, Iowa for 1 year, new stadium, moved to Eastlake, Ohio, Cleveland area for the Cleveland Indians, then now Guardians, their Class A affiliate. And after about 6 years of running the South Atlantic League with Field of the Year and managing weather and doing all that, I was fortunate enough to get my opportunity to move out west and join the San Francisco Giants. So along that time, I've utilized my skills as mostly financial and my I really appreciate the agronomic approach, and I have my own philosophies. And I work in one of those industries where there's 1,000 ways to do it, but you got to find your way and then believe in your way and then push your way. One of the things you guys know about at San Francisco is we do, you may or may not know this, but we do probably 3 times the amount of events as we do baseball games. We're a baseball stadium, but we host everything. And that's one of the challenges that wakes me up every day. And they also support all my endeavors. So while we're looking at all these things, we're supported financially through new technology and a bunch of other new stuff. So you might hear me reference the autonomous mowers we use. We're growing biologicals. We're doing a biological nutrition program that we pump into our irrigation system. We do a lot of soil sensors. We manage data to the benefit of the players. And then we're also one of the only teams in the league using this platform for like raw pitch testing, which is primarily used in the Premier League. That allows us to get day-to-day field conditions based off the grass compaction and the information collected off that. Now, what does that mean? It helps me create consistency. What I've found out in my job is to find consistency and to automate it as much as you can. That doesn't mean a machine, but just automate the process. Try to make it repeatable for everyone that's around me and who we employ. We employ is myself as a senior director. I have one senior manager and one manager, 3 full-time people, and then we have 60 part-time employees, much like yourselves and or younger versions thereof that come out and join us. And they work 150 hours a summer. We ask for 1 day a week, 1 day at night, one on the weekend so that we can kind of create. I don't need you to have experience. I can train you. I tap into my elementary education background. I try to really bring it into everybody, try to have it make sense to people. Because if it doesn't make sense to me, it's not going to make sense to many other people. So we are constantly busy. We're constantly rebuilding the surface, whether we have soccer matches or this year, our big event at the end of the year was Supercross and motocross. So this season, the San Francisco Giants have a brand new playing surface, and that playing surface has been it's been completed. It's currently growing in. It's coming along nicely. We really don't have the temperatures yet to really get it fully going, but we're in a really good place right now, and we just have a few details to touch up. One of which is grading the infield. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited for your questions when I do these things. If you do have questions, it sends me off on a tangent, and then I feel like it's the best way to go about it. So if you have questions, just raise your hand or just start blotting them out here, and we can start on. So Gary,
Greg, what year did you start with the Giants at Oracle?
good question. 2008. So
Okay.
I've been here for the glory years, as you would say.
Here's my first question. What were your thoughts? The Giants Cardinals, the Marco Scudero looking up with all that rain coming down. Did anybody notify you, hey, maybe we should put the tarp on, or they were just going to play? Because, I wasn't at the game. I'm watching it at home. And boy, there was a lot of rain coming down.
There was, and that's one of our moments where I feel like we've been able to kind of shine in the limelight. We have a system called sub-air. It's submersible airflow, and what it does, it connects to our drainage tile on the field, and it's a giant vacuum. It's a 100 horsepower vacuum, and it sucks all the water and air down through the field through the growing profile. So it gives us a competitive advantage against bad weather. Now, that day we had talked about it, and the umpire, who was the umpire that day? Well-dressed man, always wears spats, hat, really, really nice. One of the better umpires in MLB. He retired last year, and I just can't remember his name. Sorry, but I would go out there every half inning and talk to him. He's like, it's raining, it's raining. I said, I know. We'll keep up on it. We'll run material out. So he ran all the material out, and we kept going. And he goes, how do I know it's gonna, when's it gonna pass? I said, it's not gonna pass. I said, we're up 10 runs. Let's push through. And that's what we did. And in that final inning, it got worse, and we called a pitching change. There's 2 rules I think always happens, like Murphy's laws, right? On a doubleheader, you guys were talking about this earlier, one always goes into extra innings. Number two, when it's raining, there's always a pitching change at the worst moment. So, and we just kept going on it. I think the harder part was the next day. We got through it. Larry wanted to have the celebration outside because we won the National League. So we rolled the stages out. We actually had it on the wet infield. And then everybody went away. And then here I am with my crew going, we got workouts tomorrow for the World Series. How do we get through this? So here's a little unknown thing, a couple things I'm going to share with you. We ended up taking every bag of infield conditioner we had, which was about six tons, which is about 12,000 pounds. And we threw it on top. Everything we had in our barn to dry off the surface. Because if it got into the infield clay, the infield material, because it's denser than sand, it doesn't drain like a typical soil. It takes longer for it to drain. It sits on top. So if I caught the moisture on top, I'd be able to remove it, and then the lower portions would be fine. So we did that. Then we removed it all from like 10:30 to 11:30 at night. And then about 11:30, it started to rain. So we put it all in. We put it all in the corner. Then we covered the field. Came in the next morning knowing that we're going to have this. So believe it or not, I called my friend Clay Wood with the A's, and I said, "Hey, buddy, you got any extra conditioner over there?" And he goes, "I do." So I sent a guy over in the morning. We got a couple pallets of conditioner from the A's, a little bit of mound clay from the A's, and then I also was able to get some of my conditioner that I typically purchase because we use different products. And I was able to get that in on a Saturday from a company. And now that company, because of that one day, it's all of my conditioner purchases.
That's great.
So, yeah, pretty cool.
One other question. Make believe we're back 40 years and you are the head groundskeeper of either Shea Stadium or Yankee Stadium. Back then, when the teams won, all the fans seemed to pour out onto the field. What would have been your reaction? Because it's basically your playground.
Yeah, it is, but I'm the caretaker of it. And I try to, if it's every game, it would be annoying. If it's after major wins, that's a little different story. Like every game, like come on. I mean, back then they were winning a lot of, the Yankees were winning a lot, so that would have been more of a pain. But we do that like Saturday. We're hosting Fan Fest, and we're gonna allow fans to come down, and they're gonna go out onto the field. We're gonna try to limit to about 5,000. And then once the spring training game is broadcast, we're gonna exit the field. But we try to make our field as accessible as we can, which is why I also try to go through and make it as bulletproof as we can. That's why we get the soil sensors, we get the biological programs, we get all this stuff, and we get the equipment so that we can offset these things quickly. And that's also why we're testing it to see how fast we can tighten up those very same time frames for
Thanks,
recovery, Greg. And then also reuse.
Thank you so much. We're going to go to Harvey and then Mars. Harvey, you are up.
Put me online.
You got it, Frank. Harvey, unmute.
Yeah, I saw Mars in front of me. Greg, that's fascinating. I read Gary had posted an article on about this meeting about you, and forgive me, I didn't read the whole thing, but there was something about how Peter McGowan had asked you to replicate something from the Polo Grounds. Am I reading that wrong? Could you speak to that?
Yeah, Harvey. So one of the things that Peter grew up, and one of the mandates he had for my position was to mow the field without a pattern. So we're using autonomous mower. It leaves a faint pattern. But in order to get the job, my predecessor had to prove that he could mow a field without a pattern. Oh. And really what that does is when you mow, the mowers do all the work. Like if I drive towards you and I mow, I push the grass towards you. I turn around, I come back towards me. You see, even like this, right? Like what do you see? This has lighter, this is darker, right?
Yes.
Well, if we flip it around, it's the other way, right? So like if I'm looking at it, it's opposite to me. This is lighter, this is darker to me. So that's where you get that juxtaposition. And typically, when the mower does all the work. But so what we had to do, what we like to do is we like to mow in two directions so that we cut it from two different directions. That's why you see a box cut in the outfield or an X or a triple cut where it's off the foul lines and then center field. Most people like to do a double cut every day. So what we did is we created what we called a Zamboni cut. And we would mow out first, 5 passes, then we'd circle around and mow in. And then we would just make like a box and go back and forth and back and forth. And we'd make our way across the field. And the whole idea was because it reminded Peter of his youth and how they used to mow the field with like those big gang mowers that they would pull behind and not lift up. So the machinery changed, but he wanted that old classic look. Peter was also responsible for the cream jerseys and a lot of the tie-in stuff that you see to this day. The bullpens on the field that just got removed. I worked on that renovation. So there's a lot of different things that kind of go on that Peter still is around and in our hearts, and we still try to keep it true to his beliefs and what he wanted.
He sure is. Thank you very much. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to say it's probably the hardest mowing pattern to hide wear with. So you got to be a really good grass grower. And a lot of teams try to do it and then they bail out of it. And we stick with it because of Peter and what it meant to him.
Thank you. By the way,
wonderful.
Greg, Peter was a treasured member of our group, and he's greatly missed. So,
Excellent.
Mars, you are up.
Well, thank you for joining us. I have an interesting question. You might have alluded to part of it already. Candlestick being on the bay and the Polo Grounds being right about on the Harlem River, they had the field got extremely wet at times during bad weather, being so close to a waterway. Since Oracle Park, or Willie Mays Field, as I'd like to call it, is right there on the bay and there are high tides, what is the most challenging thing about keeping bay water seepage from entering the field?
We don't really have much contact with the bay water, believe it or not. We're enough above it, even with high tide, but we don't see anything. We have never seen anything come off the port walk onto the bay, onto the field. I've never seen anything come up from underneath. But where I do see it is like in the drains, a lot of times on high tide, the water collects in the cistern, the streets, and then they can't go out. So we see some flooding in the lower levels of the ballpark. We've seen that happen before. But from a field perspective, I really haven't seen much. We do go out of our way to protect the integrity of the soil and get enough oxygen in it and try to make it drain as well as we can. The bay itself, the weather itself is a benefit to what I do because I don't have any disease pressure at night. Those temperatures dip down to a point where most biological activity is not that active. So you can keep the populations in check and you don't get plant diseases or anything like that. So
thank you very much.
It's a positive. You're welcome.
Thank
Mars.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mars. Mr. Ed Freer. And again, I don't know if I mentioned this before. If anybody remembers Marty Schwab's home, maybe you would tell Greg about it because you guys would know better than me. Ed, you're up.
I can't, but Greg, thank you for your presentation. I only have a simple question. I was only in San Francisco once, and that was in February. And as I walked around the ballpark, I was quite excited to be there anyway. And as I looked through the fence at McCovey's Cove, the grass was all rolled up like carpets. I mean, I was shocked. Is that something they do periodically?
We were in the
new
middle
surface down, like you were saying?
Yeah. So when we host that Supercross and Monster Truck event, we do end up replacing the surface. Because what you missed probably 2 weeks before was they put a 4-inch layer of road base, and then they bring in I think 1,000 tons of This is the only time I'll use this word dirt. To me, that's a 4-letter word. It's a soil. But this, they use dirt because they drive motocross and they drive the monster trucks on it. So they make it. And they essentially kill my field. And during that time, because it can't breathe, it doesn't get any sunlight, so it just kills it. So we know that. So we build in a replacement line item. Now we're discovering that that affects our field in other ways. The sand that we've had has been compacted over the years, and we've done that event of the 24 years we've been open. We've probably done that event close to 15 times there. So that event has created some issues for our soils and our drainage. But I keep trying to, I keep trying to recreate it and try to liven it back up. So that's part of that. It cost us over $400,000 to replace our field this year.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well,
I
I
know.
was shocked.
Yeah, but it also allows us to work with our local growers and work with the local vendors a lot, and we support them a lot. So there are some benefits from it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ed. Jim Weber, you are up.
Yeah, Greg, two questions for you. What's your annual budget, and how in the world do you keep the vibrant color day after day after day? What's the magic?
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. There's my budget's roughly for materials is around $180,000 a year. That does not include labor. That just includes materials that are put on the field. That includes infield conditioners, mound clays, infield material, warning track material, all the fertilizers I use, and all my different programs. So one of the things that I do that some people do, some teams don't, I believe in an organic meal-based fertility program. What that means is I buy organic fertilizers and I apply them throughout, and then I double that with a liquid program, and I'm injecting those biologicals that come through. So I'm actively trying to, much like your stomach and probiotics, I'm trying to create the positive, trying to keep the positive organisms in the soil. And we actually test for those through certain kinds of tests, but we're also managing how much we're dosing out a day. And since we started to do that, we've been able to cut back on other things that maybe were, like synthetic fertilizers, doing some other, some wetting agents and some colorants that we've been able to get rid of over the last few years, which has subsequently paid for the program I'm currently on. And I'm seeing greener grass, more plants per square inch, more infiltration of water and soil gets in the ground faster. And I'm just seeing a lot of benefits from this whole thing. I'm able to get through a lot more. So for us, it's organic fertilizers and biologicals.
Do you make your own biologicals?
We brew them, but we utilize a company to provide us with the microorganisms. And most of that is bacillus bacteria and mycorrhizae. So, and what those are essentially is bacillus is what one of the main organisms is in a soil, but we build up the positive populations. There's also negative ones, and then the mycorrhizae is like a lamprey and a shark. It creates a relationship with the roots, and it eats things in the soil and gives the roots nitrogen. So it's a lot like they're beneficial organisms that help each other out.
Thank you. Great job.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you.
Mr. Ellis Graham, Paul, you are up.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. That's terrific. So if I heard you correctly, when you have these motocross events, you roll up the sod on the field, and then you spread. No,
we use the existing field. Like last year's field was 5 years old.
Okay.
And what we did is we allowed it to be a barrier to our sand below, because we have 14 inches of sand. So we try to use that as a protection layer on top of the gravel, on top of whatever else we put down on top of it. So there's that. So I know there's more than one question, Paul.
So when the event occurs, then you basically replace or regrow the grass or regrow the sod or replace it that way? I'm not sure.
Correct. What we do is we follow behind the crew that removes their topsoil out and everything else. And then we removed from the original sod layer up. And then
Okay.
this year we took about 2 inches off the old growing medium. So we removed 5 inches this year and hauled all that away and recycled it and
Wow.
reused it. And then we lowered our infield, and then we till it. We bring more sand in, we till it, we laser grade it to our specifications. We reinstall the irrigation heads. We put the irrigation out, and then we turn around and then we start laying sod. And once we
Wow.
lay the sod, that's pretty much the last piece, but it's
Okay.
also one of the more important pieces. And then this year we were able to bring in the old groundskeeper from the Rose Bowl to assist the sod company and improve their installation process. Because they got the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. He's laid a lot of sod, more than
Oh,
me. And I've been there 15 years. So we were
right.
very happy to get his help as well.
In terms of staff, how many full-time employees do you supervise in this keeping the landscaping inside the park?
We have 3 full-time, myself included, and then it's 60
Six.
part-time employees. Yeah.
Of all
From
of
all
the
walks of life.
and my last question, of all of the parks in baseball, is there one that you think is the most difficult to maintain and keep? If you had to make a guess.
The most difficult would probably be in the Midwest, St. Louis or Kansas City, because of the varying temperatures. They get
Right.
heavy winters. They get, they'll have, like when I was in Cleveland, I was up in the snow belt. So I would go from 10 below zero in winter to 100 degrees in summer for like 3 days. So I would have a 110-degree variance from one time of the year to the other. So
Right.
typically, if your roads are bad, then you're going to have a harder condition.
Right. Okay.
And I'm sure
Thank
New
you, Greg.
York isn't much easier. You're welcome.
Yeah. Thanks,
Thanks
Greg.
for your
Okay.
question.
Greg, I've seen Paul with a shovel. You might want to hire him.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I do landscaping work. Thank you, Gary. Thanks for the
Yeah.
plug. I do it for free at Oracle Park.
Greg,
You have
Greg,
to.
there
Yeah.
was a cleanup day at the Polo Grounds
Mm-hmm.
where the apartments are, and they handed out shovels and New York Giant hats, and Paul was a star that day, I must tell you.
Nice. Good job, Paul.
Thanks.
Dan, did you have your hand up, or Dan Taylor? You're muted now, Dan.
Strange. Okay, gotcha. Greg, first, thanks for doing this. And I just have to share, and I think a lot of us feel this way. One of the great things about attending a game at Oracle Park is when you first come out onto the mezzanine or come out of the tunnel in the upper deck, and your eyes are hit with that great green turf that you create. It's just breathtaking, and you do a wonderful job. And thanks for all you do. My questions: what do you consider to be the best type of turf for a baseball field, the best soil for an infield, and also for a pitcher's mound?
Good questions. First, I'd like to say thank you for your comments. And I agree with you. I think the first free thing you see when you come to a ballpark is the beautiful grass. Pay for parking, pay for your ticket. You have your souvenirs, you have your food, you're making your way down. That's my aha moment when people walk out and they see it. We recognize that. And I explain that to my staff. This is very important. We're the first free look that people get at the ball game. I said, so we have to be perfect. We got to be right in there and make it perfect. As far as grass is kind of dependent upon your but the Mason-Dixon line essentially across the United States is the difference between warm season grass and cool season grass. We're right there where it's warm but not too cold and all these other things. So in the north, it's preferred that you use Kentucky bluegrass, Poa pratensis. In the south, it's Bermuda grass, and there's a ton of common types of Bermuda grass coming in. And just so you know, the scientific of that is Synodon dactylon. So they are doing a lot of different things there. This year, because of our wear and tear, we took one of those cooler varieties of Bermuda grass and we took that, we shaved it down as a base of our sod, and then put the bluegrass on top. So we're going to have the best of both worlds. What we try to do is be creative and create reinforced sod without having to pay the extra little bit. I'm viewed as kind of the mad scientist around the league. So, I'm always kind of pushing it. For infields, a good friend of mine owns a company. It's called Dura Edge. The Yankees and Mets all use it. I was the first professional field to use it in the minor leagues in Cleveland, and I was instrumental in getting him into Major League Baseball. And now I think 28 of the 30 teams use it. So we all pretty much are utilizing that material. It's based out of Pittsburgh. It's called the Pittsburgh Red Beds. And then he ships it all around the country on a model of like Coca-Cola, where the clay is a syrup, and then he adds local sand to it and then blends it in. So when I came out west, I saw my infield. I was on it for one day, and I said, it was hard as a rock, but I could put a hose on it, and water would just run right through it. It was made from volcanic cinders and some mostly, most like a little bit of clay, a little bit of silt. It was about 70%. And after about a week, I watched it play. I watched manage it. I had to roll it a lot. And I looked at my boss and said, we got to add some clay in this. So that kind of started. He's like, clay, we want to play games. I'm like, you're not going to drain through your infield anyways. We need to add some clay to this. So by 2000, it was 2008. My first renovation was 2009. I convinced them. And by 2010, we were putting in portable mounds and redoing our infield. And then going back a few more years later, about 2018, we took the old infield out and put in a brand new Dura Edge infield surface. And one of the interesting things about that, have you guys met Lisa Pantagius yet? She's our CFO. She's a wonderful woman. She's a huge baseball fan. And she read an article about Dura Edge in Seattle, and she sent it to me with a nice little letter saying, do we use this? And I responded with like, yes, you've been paying for this for a few years. We're the ones that brought them to the West Coast. So you could always tell the fans, it's hard being a fan and an employee, and the good ones can seem to bridge it really well. For the mounds, Dan, last part of your question, we use a product called Black Stick. It's a black clay mined out of St. Louis area. It's really like, I think it's from basically a floodplain of the Mississippi that's been compressed over years and probably an old bog of some sort that's been turned into a clay over time. But they strip mine it off the surface, they mill it, and then they bring it out to us. I wouldn't recommend it for a little league, but for what we do, it's wonderful. We also use that in our batter's boxes, and then we have to play with that once in a while. After Buster's injury, we had to change some of our clays around. We had to soften up home plate, water it a little bit more so that he could feel more comfortable and play more innings behind the plate. So we do some of that, helpful work around the diamond. We do have a little bit of a home field advantage, and we just keep working it. We try to when I met Gabe Kapler, I don't know how you guys feel about him, but on my end, he was a really good communicator. So it was really easy for me to work with him. But I told him something that really struck me as odd. I told him that we're here to help you win games. So anything you need, we want to help you. And he told me that he's never been told that from a groundskeeper before. And I was floored by that because of everything I know of, like Matty Schwab, Marty Schwab, and everyone else. I do know about the apartment and that he was moved to San Francisco as well. And I've heard the stories about Aparicio, and I heard the funny story about them taking out first base and then putting it back in a candlestick. And they sent an umpire out the second time, and they all left and drove around the block, came back and did it again. Really upset the umpires. So it's pretty good. I've been trying to get it. We have a Groundskeeper Hall of Fame, and if any of you do have information about that, I would like to get Matty in there because I think it's very important that he gets recognized for his due diligence, because he was a pioneer in this industry. I just don't have a lot of information on him to make the recommendation, but I think we could get him in. And I think it's just a little trophy we pass around. And every once in a while, it makes its way to the Hall of Fame. So maybe we can get him into the Hall of Fame for a few minutes.
Thank you, Greg. That's fascinating. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. Frank Lewis, you're up.
Greg, I have thank you. I've got several topics. One is in Detroit, I believe it's the last stadium which has a dirt path between the pitcher's mound and home plate. About 3 or 4 years ago, it disappeared in Arizona. When I first knew the game in the 40s and 50s, most of the parks had dirt paths. So, what is the reason for the transition from dirt paths to grass? And why is it still there in Detroit? And I got another topic after that.
Okay. First, answer your question. It's really interesting. We covered this at the Baseball Hall of Fame when we were there. We had our meetings there. It was a wonderful time. During the time when baseball was becoming popular, there's also a sport, cricket. And the cricket dimensions and the baseball dimensions are very similar. So I believe that the cricket pitch, the pitching areas from the mound until the plate, that was for the cricket pitch. And so they would bounce the ball and they would do that. And then over time, it also is a high traffic area in front of the mound. The pitcher comes off, catches the ball. He's happy if he threw a strike. He stomps his foot if he's mad. So it's a constant area of high traffic. So it kind of turned into an area that, hey, if I just, I don't want to call it lazy, but if I just get rid of this area, it may be easier to maintain. So you see a lot of teams kind of go to that. Arizona was one of the first teams to put it in back, and then the Tigers redid it when they moved into Comerica Park. The other interesting thing about Comerica Park is they have the home plate, right? Their home plate circle is not a circle. It's an actual home plate. And the San Diego Padres were the first ones to do that in the playoffs. So Detroit kind of took it off. It's really cool.
The Mets and the Phillies are playing 2 games in London. It's been similar things have done previous years. How do they set the ballpark up for baseball? Who goes there? How long before the games are played do they send them over there? And please tell us what you know about that operation.
Certainly. So I know about that because I know the guy who does it. Murray Cook of the Brakeman Group is good friends with our commissioner, and he has the MLB turf. Like, he's kind of their go-to guy if there's questions or anything like that. He's never managed a field at our level, but he's very knowledgeable and he's a real good business sense. And he does he did the Iowa fields, he does the London game. They're in North Korea right now, and they're going to do Richmond Field the Rickman Field in Alabama. He's doing that one. So he has a company that does it, but he does hire former minor league groundskeepers and major league groundskeepers, and they go in there, and it takes a long time for them to set that up. In London specifically, they play on a turf, but it's a turf that they used to, I think they used it in Montreal, in the Montreal field. It's put together like on pallets, and they put it together and they seat it together, and then they have a natural infield. So there's different ways to build a field to make it happen. But because they're on a field that is a soccer pitch normally, they have to put the carpet over top of it, and then they kind of have to play on turf there. So they do it differently. There are different rules for how it goes down, and there's different steps to get that process. But the reality is they're going out there, they're building a baseball field on a soccer pitch, and they're beginning to manage this. I would say the London one is probably 2 weeks out. They'll get the facility, turn it over into a baseball field, and then turn it back to them within the following week. So it's probably a 3-week process for that. In Alabama, I know they've been working on it for the last 2 years. And Iowa, they had a lot of success with the Iowa games. They did that. It was 2 years out, and then they kept it an extra year. And from what I understand, not Frank Robinson, sorry, rest his soul. He was one of my bosses, wonderful man. Frank Thomas, I believe, bought with an investment group. They were trying to build up that Iowa cornfield and build like a youth baseball area for tournaments and stuff like that. So that facility will still be in use today. Because really the goal of these international games and these travel games are to grow the game of baseball. With the long games and kind of where we went the last few years, it got boring. And even my kids and myself, I'm like, man, this stuff's got to speed up. So seeing these new rules, I know that it's a change, and change is hard for some people, but I really feel like they've been beneficial from a timing standpoint and an action standpoint. Did I answer your question, Frank?
Yes, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Norm.
Greg, thank you so much for your presentation. I just want to tell you that you would have been a great teacher. You're a very interesting speaker, and I appreciate that. And also appreciate you and your crew. I go to Giants games, and my friend Greg and I go, and you are an important part of our baseball experience. We get to the games early, and we watch batting practice. We look forward to watching you guys put in the batter's box, lay down the lines, the whole thing. If it's starting to rain, we're looking at the tarp, wondering what you're going to do. We critique you. You're a part of the baseball experience.
Thank you.
It's a good part of the experience. So thank you for that. I just have one question for you. They've changed the rule now for the batter running to first base. And so now the batter can run inside the line. Is there still going to be a runner's box on the right side?
Yeah, there's still going to be a runner's box. It's halfway down at 45 feet. Basically, what they wanted is they wanted all of us to have between from the foul line. Oops, hold on. I just lost you guys. I don't think I'm off.
Oh, you're on. You're good.
Okay. I don't know where I'm at. I can't see myself. Okay, good. I'm not shocked. So basically, from the foul line, from the outside of the foul line to the grass edge, they wanted a minimum of 18 inches, or you could take it out to 24 inches, because they want a consistent line of sight for the umpires. This is something that probably only 2 or 3 umpires are, pushing for, but it's something the league felt was important to try to get it within a closer parameter. We originally were 12 inches. The Yankees were right on the 4 inches off the line. So what they're doing is they've asked us to go 18 inches or 24 inches. We're currently going to be at 18 inches.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And something you guys may or may not know, you mentioned chalking, Norm. We use gravity box chalkers when we chalk. So what we have is we essentially build a box, we put a metal screen underneath it, and we hit it with a dead blow hammer. And that goes all the way back to the early times of the Chicago Cubs. The original groundskeeper used to chalk that way. So that's something that I pulled from outside of the organization and brought in my 15 years that I've been doing since I was in the Little League, since I've been in professional baseball. I felt like it was very important to bring that to San Francisco to try to connect the dots. So thanks for noticing, Norm.
Hey, Greg, before I ask Jim, 7 o'clock game at Oracle. When do you start your preparation for the game?
At 8 a.m.
All day, wow.
Yeah, I don't get there at 8 a.m. We start the mowing and we're doing all that stuff, but we're watering, we're mowing, we're cleaning up the warning track. A normal day for us starts at 8 a.m. We get the mowers out, they mow, we start cleaning up the tracks, we start prepping the mounds. The mound prep takes probably 6 or 8 hours throughout the day. By noon, we are about ready to cover it back up, and then we pull it off and do a little more work on it throughout the day. The same thing with the plate, baselines, all the clay surfaces. I have this philosophy. It's a 70-30 philosophy that when the team is in town and we're hosting homestands, I spend 70% of my time working on the hard surfaces, the infield, the mounds, the warning track, the batter's boxes, the bullpens, and I spend 30% of my time working on the grass. And when the team leaves, I flip-flop that. I make all my grass applications. I do all my aerification. I get everything ready for that time when the team comes back. Because first of all, your grass can't recover in enough time. And secondly, I want to make sure the fertilizers are worked in. I want to make sure that the sand is worked into the grass. You'll go out there sometimes and you'll see some rooster tails, sand hitting the grass from a ball. But ideally, when a player dives for a ball, I don't want a piece of fertilizer getting in his eye. I don't want, someone running into something, hitting something hard. So, we really try to use that leverage to our advantage. And that's a core principle of what I believe.
Thank you so much. Judge Jim, you're up.
Thanks, Gary. Greg, how much feedback, if any, do you get from the players about the condition of the field?
It depends on the player. I mentioned earlier we work with Buster Posey real close. That's kind of a unique situation with that. I typically, when I talk to the players, Jim, I get their feedback and I talk with them, and then I ask them to go back to the coaches, because the coaches are the ones that are developing the game plan and things like that. I give you an interesting scenario. We're 2014, I think, and so we're doing pretty well. Maybe it's 2012. And Jeremy out and Ron Wotus comes to me and he goes, "Hey, it had to be 2012, maybe even 2010. I think it was 2012 though." He's like, "Hey, we're facing Jason Marquis. He's a sinker baller. I want you to take the area in front of the plate. I call it the Zen Garden. I geared it after the Cobb's pit in Detroit. Ty Cobb used to hit the ball into there so it would die, so the infielders would have a better chance, or they make it rock hard. He'd hit it down over there, and so he could bounce it over the player's head, depending on what they wanted. We do something similar. We make it loose and soft and consistent. This is why I mentioned consistency before. I learned this from Jeremy Alfeld. So Ron Wotus asked me to do that. All of a sudden, Jeremy Alfeld comes and starts pitching, and the balls are all of a sudden now bouncing over Crawford's head or going over some other one's head. So he politely pulls me aside one day and goes, "Greg, we're in charge of the playoff bonuses." And I'm like, "Come on, Jeremy, I've been with you for 3 or 4 years. What's the problem?" And he goes, "It's just been inconsistent." He goes, "I'm a double play machine. I need to be able to get that. They're dependent on me to get that double play." And I said, I appreciate your feedback. And this is important for me because I didn't look at it like this. I thought I was helping the coach, but it's the infield coach, not the pitching coach, right?
Right.
So I said, "Well, you need to go tell Dave, but I will return it back to what it was, because I believe your point in consistency, not because you threatened me for my playoff bonus, but because I believe in your consistency, your argument." And it really made a lot of sense to me that when you go out there, you expect it to perform and be consistent. And that's kind of why I've gone down the technological and data side, is to get that consistency. So I'll tell you guys this: we water our infield. We have soil sensors in there. I water my infield on a night game between 34 and 36% moisture content. For a day game, I go 36 to 38. And you wouldn't think that makes that much of a difference, but that 2% rise on the infield moisture gets me from inning 3 to inning 7, and then 8 and 9 depends on how much sun we have and how much cloud cover we have. But I've had cleat in, cleat out after baseball games, and I've been able to find a lot more consistency utilizing the data that I'm finding. And I know that seems a lot for a lot of people. I think we just water the dirt, clean up peanut shells, and mow the grass. But really, a lot of what we do is just manage water, how much we're putting out, how soft it is, how hard we can manipulate it.
In the same vein, do you have pitchers with differing feelings about mound conditions?
Yes. Yes.
And how do you manage that? Do you?
I can manage it, or it's kind of hard. There's a pecking order, right? The shortstop on the infield, the ace on the mound. When we had Bumgarner, he liked it a certain way. So we would make it kind of medium. He didn't really like it too hard. He didn't care if it was hard, but he liked it on the firm, the hard side. And then we had another pitcher, and I can't remember who it was, came to me complaining about how hard it was and that he wanted it softer. But he followed Bumgarner.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I can't make it soft for you because it's going to take me 2 days to get it in. So it wasn't Kane, it wasn't Lincecum, but it was, it wasn't Vogelsong. But it was like really interesting from my end, because I'm like, these guys are making 20 million, and I need to, I got to kind of make them, they're the ace, right? When Evan Longoria came in, is a good story. He came in and we tried to do some stuff for him. He came to me and said, "Hey, I want third base firm." I It's okay. So when you say firm to a groundskeeper, that means less water. You want it harder, right? So I didn't water one day. The next day, he blew up on me. Wasn't very happy. Thought I was trying to hurt him, kill him, do whatever. And I said, hey, it's not what we're doing. We're happy you're here. There's obviously a communication gap. You said firm. Firm to me means dry. He's like, no, I want it wet and hard. I said, okay, let me see if I can figure that out. And so then I went back and I figured I just need to roll his area more. Well, I only had a 2-ton roller. So I started rolling with that just in his area. And then since I had the roller out, I'd go around the back arc. And then I'd say, oh, it's first base. First baseman never complain because there's always traffic. It's always torn up. So I started doing where they lead off to try to help Belt out a little bit. About 2 weeks later, after doing all this, I get it. Crawford pulls me over and goes, hey, are you doing something different on the back arc? I'm like, what? What are you talking about? He goes, I noticed that when I go for my backhand, the ball's coming up. And normally it's about here. And he's standing up. And he goes, normally it's about here, right? But it's about here now. And he raises his glove like an inch. And I'm like, no way. He goes, yeah. I'm like, no way. He goes, yeah. It's okay. This is what we've been doing. And he goes, it's okay. He goes, I'll make the adjustment. And I go, Brandon? He goes, yeah. I go, no. We've been at this together a long time. You've been very honest with me. You've been very, you've shared information and, we have a really good professional relationship. I go, we're going to stop doing that. We're going to roll third base and we're going to drive it off and go back over to first base because of his professional and the way he handled himself. And Brandon Crawford was one of the better Giants I've been around my entire time. And, some of the stuff and the contract stuff, in any way you want to put it, though that's a business decision, and I don't blame anyone for making a business decision because they have to try to put out a winning product and they don't feel like he's in that system. That's their decision. You got to live with your decisions, just like I got to live with mine. But the whole thing is like just how in tune he was to his conditions and everything. Again, speaking to that consistency. And even at the end, when I had, when he wasn't the Gold Glover, I would go to him and be like, "What do you think?" He's like, "This is really good." I go, "You like this moisture?" Yes. That's where I settled on my numbers for 34 and 36. And it's all because of the good relationships I was able to have with these guys. But now I'm on to like I have Aurelia when I first got there in LA. I had Brian Bocock, I think, for 1 year, and then Renteria came in, and then Crawford. So, we've had really good shortstops. And I've had, like, when you get that consistency with one person for that long, it's amazing the kind of friendships that you grow over time. I don't call him up or go get beers or hang out or anything, but when he sees me at work, we have a good relationship. And that's really one of the, one of the better things that comes in this industry.
I could imagine that a groundskeeper would be an infielder's best friend. Very good. Thank you, Greg.
Sometimes.
You got time for another question or two?
I got time for as many questions as you need. I gotta get my kid to baseball, but other than that, we're good.
Ken, you are up, Ken.
Thank you. I missed part of that. I'm actually in the midst of my split season ticket draft for my Giants tickets right now, so I might have to jump off in a minute. But when I was looking at the schedule, there's an actual traditional doubleheader on July 27th against Colorado, which really shocked me. It makes me think from the old days of the Mets-Giants famous doubleheader back in the 60s, but the long one. But in any case, from a groundskeeper's point of view, what would that mean for you, the traditional, not a day-night, but a traditional doubleheader where there's that quick changeover between games? What would you have to do differently? Would you do anything before the first game differently, et cetera, et cetera?
Great question. We try not to do anything differently. So we will have, what we'll do is we'll overlap our staff between the first game and the second game. And so we'll have a larger staff during that time. And then we will still repair our mounds, our plate, our clays. We'll clean up the lines. We'll add conditioner. We'll drag everything out. We'll try to complete everything we can in a shorter time frame with more people. So the organized chaos for that, I think they're going to give us 45 minutes, which is ideal because the starting pitcher takes anywhere between 30 and 25 to 30 minutes. And that's really what you base the start of the next game off of. How fast can your starting pitcher warm up and be ready to go? As the home team, that's our concern. We don't really care about the visiting team. They can do whatever they want to do. They can sit in the bullpen for 4 hours. So, it doesn't matter. So once we get to there, we want to try to, again, replicate it. But we found some consistency by keeping our moisture in there. We'll be able to water the infield the same. We'll be able to get all those things. And then that time of year, it's usually a little cooler, a little more marine layer. So I feel like it's going to play consistently between the two. The infield, the mounds, and the batter's boxes are going to be the ones that we keep our eye on closest.
Thank you.
Excellent question, Ken.
Greg, I got a question. You mentioned Gabe Kapler before.
Mm-hmm. I figured that may be a fire button here.
Not one of our favorites in here, but Bob Melvin. The Giants have consistently talked about having their pitchers ground ball pitchers. Have you been instructed to grow the grass higher to slow the ball down for the infielders? Not yet. We haven't had those conversations yet. Usually when they come back from spring and they have their group selected, we'll have that conversation. We've been, when Bochy was here and we had older outfielders, when you had Burrell and left and, some of those guys out there that were a little long in the tooth, we'd mow our outfield at 1.25 inches. We'd mow our infield at 1.25 inches. So we've been anywhere between 1.25 inches and 5/8 of an inch on our grass height. And we will keep foul territory inch and a quarter. We'll match the outfield with that, but the infield may vary depending on what they want. I mentioned the Cobb's Pit, the area in front of home plate, my Zen garden, if you will. We call it a Zen garden because we put a little design in it every day. We'll do checkers, we'll do some sort of design just to keep everybody engaged and intrigued with it. And we water that down significantly. And that's an area where we try to slow the ball down on ground balls. And we want to basically eat up the, absorb the momentum of the ball and slow it down tremendously. The because we did some data on that, and an average ground ball comes off the bat at like 37 degrees. So like it's pretty quick down. And if you get them to miss a little bit more, it'll chop up. The grass itself won't necessarily slow it down. It'll slow down ball roll, but not really on the hop. So we try to catch it on the first hop in the dirt and go from there. And my last question, have you ever in your entire experience dealt with artificial turf?
No, that is my number one enemy. As a grass grower, go ahead.
There's a great quote from Tug McGraw. Dan's laughing, so I think Dan might know. Tug McGraw, who was a famed pitcher and a bit of a clown, was asked if he preferred grass to artificial turf. And he replied, "I don't know. I never smoked artificial turf."
Good.
Gary, can I get another question?
Absolutely, Frank.
There's so much emphasis in all sports on home court, home field, home court, home rink advantage, and which puzzles me because these players are all professionals. They know how to play the game. But the only sport in which there is actually a real difference between stadiums, courts, arenas, is baseball. Is it fair when each team has groundskeepers that structure it to favor the home team? And have you had any complaints on that score? Or do you or anyone else know of anything of that nature?
Yeah, we had a complaint from the Royals in the 2014 World Series. They felt like we were overwatering our infield to slow them down. False. I just told you what I try to water my infield at, and that is a little bit on the heavier side. We also don't have much rain in San Francisco during the playing season, so we can get away with it. But I think the home field advantage is true, and I think it should be there. I think if I can manipulate the rules to benefit my team for 81 games, it gives us as employees, as fans, as baseball fanatics, an ability to maybe swing it to your advantage. If you can win 70, 67, this is what Bochy did, win 67% of your games at home and go 500 on the road, you're going to win 90 some games. You're going to be in the playoff every year.
What
so you
about
always hear, yeah.
Football, basketball, hockey, is home court or rink or court, rink or field, is that of any significance?
As far as the sizes in that, I do think you see that. Like the athlete we want at our ballpark is not the same athlete they want, say, in Boston, because of the size. So, and as they get better and they grow, I think you're starting to see teams kind of draft towards their strengths. And we did that for a while with Sabian towards the end of it all. And I really think that it's important. One of the things that people don't understand is like the construction side of baseball. So if you get a lot of rain,
sports, football, basketball, and hockey.
Yeah. Well, in hockey, I think they're what I know of hockey is the home ice is really about how hard it is and how often they change it out. And so it's more about the skating style. It's much like grass or anything else. And so it's more like the skating style of the athletes. So like if you're at Madison Square Garden, before they didn't have the different levels, right? Before the renovation, they put the basketball on top of the ice, and then they do whatever. They put the concert on top of that. But so like they have to get rid of the ice and bring it back in. So a lot of those things are becoming like you're seeing a lot of that get taken out of it by the design and the new technologies that are around to do all that and the management of the facility. Is that what you're looking for, Frank?
Pretty much, but it's almost in a basketball court is a basketball court.
Yeah.
What difference does it make? And they change directions. They change. Right. And hockey, it's and the football fields, if they're in wind or sun conditions, they each play half the game in each direction. And these guys are trained, so it's nice to have the backing of the home field, but it's also nice to have hostility. It's nice to be up against people who hate your guts and want you to lose too. So I'm just wondering, the degree of emphasis placed on being home in any sport. These guys are professionals. They know how to play the game.
Yeah, I think it's hugely important because I also think that they're around their families and they're sleeping in their own beds. And, these athletes, they are really in tune with their bodies and what they're trying to accomplish. So a home field advantage is real. And like I was mentioning, the construction of baseball fields and things like that. If you're in the Midwest, you get a lot of rain, you put a grate on your field. So your pitcher's mound to home plate sinks about 4 inches. Whereas my mound is I have a flat field. So I have a true 10 inches sticking out of the ground. So everyone thinks my mound is illegal and everyone thinks it's too big. And it's not. It's well within the league parameters. And that's an advantage that we had. When Matt Cain threw his perfect game, he came to me and said, see, I said a 12-inch mound, but he goes, I told you a 12-inch mound was more fun. But he doesn't know this, but he had a 10-inch mound, but I told him it was a 12-inch mound.
Thanks, Frank. Does anybody have a question who hasn't asked one, who needs to ask one? If not, Greg, there are 2 people, repeaters. You want their question?
Okay. Yes, please. I've enjoyed this a lot, Gary. It's been fun.
Jim, go ahead. Quick question, 1 question, then Mars 1 question, and we'll wrap it up. Jim, go ahead. Unmute, Jim.
Greg, do visiting teams make requests as far as the field goes? Is that typical?
They can ask. I won't do it. I had an experience with the Cubs. Their catcher, who's now with the Cardinals, came out and he thought it was too wet. So the umpire called me out and he's like, "This is too wet." And he said, "No, it's not." And he goes, "Yes, it is." I'm getting complaints from from the catcher. It's who's the guy there? I want to say Castillo, but it's not Castillo.
Contreras.
The former Cubs catcher that went to the Cardinals.
Contreras.
Yes, Contreras. Sorry. So he came out and complained, and I told the umpire, I said, I can't do anything. I said, that's how Buster likes it. And he goes, okay. Turns around, I jog back out. He comes running out and he says something to the umpire. He points to the ground and goes, gives me the old, what's up with this? And the umpire goes, that's how Buster wants it. And he turns, looks at the dugout, tips his cap, squats down, never says another word. So, you get those things, but there's also the mutual respect. Like the players want the best players out there as well because they want to beat the best. They want to compete. Their sport's about competition and beating the best. That's why the Bonds and not John Rocker, but the guy from the Dodgers. That's why their meetings were so fun. Eric Gagne. Yeah, Gagne. That's why it was so much fun because they were the best at the time. They wanted to beat each other. Gagne didn't want to walk him. He wanted to strike him out every time. He wanted to shove it. Fun.
Mm-hmm.
So,
thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Mars, last question of the night.
All right, thank you. Well, here's an interesting one. They've made changes to Oracle Park, like many other ballparks, in either bringing in the dimensions, configuring the outfield walls. There's an area in dead center field. There is no actual homage to the Polo Grounds. You have that area where they have beer and I guess they call it the Kale Garden. But if there was, yeah. So from your perspective, could there be like an indentation that if you've ever seen photographs of the Polo Grounds where you had the left center field bleachers, the right center field bleachers, and then the indentation that was in play that went all the way to the clubhouse to make the dimension 484 feet. How would you configure, or is it doable, or I'm sure you would have a great part in the landscaping if they actually did an indentation going back 10 or 20 feet into that Kale Garden? How would you do it? And do you think it's doable at all?
Well, Mars, correct?
Yes.
We had I was part of the renovation that moved the fences in 10 feet and took the bullpens out of the mound, I off the field and put them back there. I was part of the design crew that did all that. Few things going on back there that are a little more difficult. The concourse is a full-on foundation for the building. It's about 3 feet thick and it has rebar everywhere. You really can't do anything into that area. So that is a little difficult. From another standpoint, do you like to get free agent hitters? Because if we go back to 480, we're not going to get anybody. We get a lot of good pitchers signing with us, but I guess I kind of see what you're saying, and I understand that that we want to have the tie-in to the Polo Grounds and everything else. The back of that has been rebranded kind of like a boardwalk baseball. So it's kind of a, like an old time baseball kind of area with pitching machines and stuff like that. But we don't have a lot of space. So like I have to put my batting cage there. That's where my lawnmowers are currently at. And I think it sounds really good on paper, and I really like the idea of it because I like the homage of it. But I think it'd be very hard to make the fences bigger in this day and age, just given the contracts and how everyone goes about everything. I would say that I met Tal Hill. Remember Houston with Tal's Hill?
Yes.
In deep center field. And as soon as he was out as president, they got rid of that thing. Because they wanted to they felt like it was a little bit of a danger. So some of it is player safety. You don't really want to have squares out there. You want to have rounded angles and whatnot. And I think the ballpark at this size, I know it came in center field, and that wall is 6 feet across center field, except in the very center of the batter's eye where it's 9 feet. I feel like the field plays a lot better and truer because the moisture in the air, I feel like really hampered the Giants until they kind of got the humidor and then the other stuff. Like we could have had some guys hitting. I've seen some balls crushed that fall short or are caught on the warning track, and they're just like, I used to hear it all the time in the early. You got AT&T'd. You got AT&T'd. Visiting teams talk about it. Everyone talks about it. not an easy environment to hit. So it may only be 405 and 415 or 399 in center, but it plays like 410, 415. And the 415 plays more like 420, 425. So
That's interesting to hear.
yeah, I really think that it would be hard to, because one year we had a lot of ground rule doubles because of the larger things, and they asked us to do something about that. So we researched horse tracks, and we realized that those athletes, the horses, they need a soft pillar of like 3/4 inch, and then they need a solid surface. So their hoof needs to make contact, which like a baseball would make contact. Then it needs to grab something, and then they'd run on that. So we got this machine, and we started really aggressively managing our warning track, and then we just water the crap out of it, try to get it to kind of compact back down. And we went from 44 ground roll doubles to 7. And then we went up to 13 and then back down to 10.
Oh,
Over 3 years.
That's interesting.
hello?
I'm so much interested in this conversation. I think it's quite
Hello?
different than anything we had before. And I grew grass too. I grew grass too, but it was of another nature.
It's common out here in San Francisco, Mars. Very common.
Hey, Greg.
Thank you very much.
Greg, I want to buffer off what Mars just said. We've had a lot of authors and players and people associated with Giants. This was just so interesting. I mean, all of us, I think, would just walk out of the stadium and see the grass. And now we really know how much is involved in this. And I mean, you did a fantastic job. And every time anytime I see a game on TV now, besides looking how beautiful it is, I'm going to be thinking of you. So let's all give it up for Elliott. Greg,
thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
You have a lot of people who attend the games there. Don't be surprised if they try to track you down and say hello, okay?
Not a problem. I'd appreciate it. I love talking to fans, especially when I'm walking by. Sometimes I ignore them if I'm in a hurry, pretend I don't hear them, but for the most time, you see my earbuds in, don't bother. Don't talk to me. But if not, I'm open. Pre-game walking down. I love finding fans and chatting them up, especially if they're into baseball. So, and from my end, like I really didn't know what to expect, and I knew I would get a smart group of individuals and people that love the game of baseball, and each question was on point. And I thought you guys did a wonderful job with me too. You really made me dig into some stories, and maybe someday I'll write a book, but not yet.
By the way, you're always welcome. If we ever have a guest that interests you, please hop on board. But again, let's give it up for Greg Elliott.
Gary, one more thing. What's that guy's name? He lived in Long Beach, and he wrote about baseball, and can't remember, and he played briefly, and he had the same reaction I had. When I saw so many games on black and white television, when I finally got to the ballpark, I was surprised that the grass was green.
I don't, but Greg is the guy who makes it green. So
thank you. Thank you, Carmine, too.
We will see each other next Wednesday with Marty Laurie. Until then, if anybody wants to hang around and talk Giant baseball, I'm going to stop the recording and we'll talk a little. Greg, go take care of your kids, man. Thanks again. Be good, everybody.
Gotta go to baseball. See you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Thank you.